Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopi Janada Gopi Janada
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam namaskritya Chaiva narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriye. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should first offer our respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, to Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and to Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Name Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Shri Sunyavadi Paschita Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So we're continuing from the first canto, chapter 17, and it's verse 19, and it's titled The Punishment and Reward of Kali. And so
I think we have the wrong verse. I think Colleen's ahead of her time. Is that the wrong verse? I think
it's
that's
19, yeah, and you wrote 20.
You're ahead of your time.
Anyway, just forget it.
Vacation time.
Good, that's what?
Just leave it. I'll just chant it. I'll do the word, I'll say one word, then you repeat, then I'll do the line. We'll just do it like that. So, Kaschit Vikalpa Vashana Kaschit Vikalpa Vashana. If you have a smartphone, you can chant it, otherwise just leave it. Ahor Atmanam Ahor Atmana Daivam Anye Pare Karma Daivam Anye Apare Karma Swabhavam Apare Prabham. Yeah, so I don't know how far we are in this, but
That's what I get for feeling sure of myself.
yeah.
That I finally had the right person.
So I'll just chant the word for word. There's no reason now.
It's done already.
So, okay. So I don't know if anybody can see. Kaschit Vikalpa Vasana Ahur Atmanam Daivam Anye Pare Karma Swabhavam Apare Prabham Kaschit Vikalpa Vasana Ahur Atmanam Daivam Anye Pare Karma Swabhavam Apare Prabham Kaschit Vikalpa Vasana Ahur Atmanam Daivam Anye Pare Karma Swabhavam Apare Prabham. So anyone else? Thank you very much, Maniji.
One more. Just give me 1 second.
It's Kechid. You can say Kaschid, it's Kechid.
Okay.
She already said it.
Teshit Vikalpa Vasana
Kechit Vikalpa Vasana
Ahur Atmanam Atmanaha
Ahur Atmanam Atmanaha
Devam Anye
Daivam Manye Pare Karma.
Sabhavam apare pabam.
Keschit vikalpa vasana
Keshit bhagalpa vasana.
ahur atmanam atmanaha
Avaratmanam Atmanaha.
daivamanne pare karma
Daivam Manye Pare Karma.
swabhavam pare prabhum
Swabhavam Pare Prabham. Kechit Vikalpa Vasana. Ahoratmanam Atmanaha. Daivam Manye Pare Karma. Swabhavam Pare Prabhum.
Kechit vikalpa vasana.
Kechit Vikalpa Vasana.
Ahur atmanam atmana.
atmanam atmanaha
Daivamane pare karma.
daivamanne pare karma
Swabhavama pare prabhum.
swabhavam pare prabhum
Kechit vikalpa vasana.
Keschit vikalpa vasana
Ahur atmanam atmana.
ahur atmanam atmanaha daivam manne pare karma swabhavam pare prabhum
Anyone else? Kechit.
Keshit.
Some of them.
Some of them.
Vikalpa.
Vikalpa.
Vasana.
Vasanaha.
Those who deny all kinds of duality.
Those who deny all kinds of duality
Ahu.
Ahu.
Declare. Atmanam.
Atmanam.
Own self.
Own self.
Atmanaha.
Atmanaha.
Of the self.
Of the self.
Daivam.
Daivam.
Superhuman.
Superhuman.
Anye.
Anye.
Others.
Others.
Apare.
Apare.
Someone else.
Someone else.
Karma.
Karma.
Activity.
Activity.
Swabhavam.
Swabhavam.
Material nature.
Material nature.
Apare.
Apare.
Many other.
Many others.
Prabham.
Prabham.
Authorities.
Authorities.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Some of the philosophers who deny all sorts of duality declare that one's own self is responsible for his personal happiness and distress. Others say that superhuman powers are responsible, while yet others say that activity is responsible, and the gross materialists maintain that nature is the ultimate cause. Now, please repeat after me. Some of the philosophers who deny all sorts of duality declare that one's own self is responsible for his personal happiness and distress.
For his personal happiness and distress.
Others say that superhuman powers are responsible. While yet others say that activity is responsible. And the gross materialists maintain that nature is the ultimate cause. Some of the philosophers who deny all sorts of duality declare that one's own self is responsible for his own personal happiness and distress. Others say that superhuman powers are responsible, while yet others say that activity is responsible, and the gross materialists maintain that nature is the ultimate cause. And what was the previous verse? It says, "O greatest among human beings, it is very difficult to ascertain the particular miscreant who has caused our sufferings, because we are bewildered by all the different opinions of theoretical philosophers." Okay, so the Dharma is speaking to Kirkin, and there's a question that who's done this, who's beaten you, who's done this heinous act? And the bull is now beginning to answer, so he gives this this is the first explanation. So here's the purport by Srila Prabhupada. As referred to above, philosophers like Jayamini and his followers established that fruitive activity is the root cause of all distress and happiness. And that even if there is a superior authority, some superhuman powerful god or gods, he or they are also under the influence of fruitive activity because they reward result according to one's action. They say that action is not independent because action is performed by some performer. Therefore, the performer himself is the cause of his own happiness or distress. In the Bhagavad Gita 6.5, which is the verse about controlling the mind, I'll read it in a few minutes. And in the Bhagavad Gita, we're making the mind to a friend. In the Bhagavad Gita 6.5, also it's confirmed that one's mind, freed from material perfection, one can deliver himself from the sufferings of material pangs. So one should not entangle himself. One should not entangle oneself in matter by the mind's material affections. Thus, one's own mind is one's friend or enemy in one's material happiness and distress. Atheistic, materialistic Sankarites conclude that material nature is the cause of all causes. According to them, combinations of material elements are the cause of all material happiness and distress, and disintegration of matter is the cause of freedom from all material pangs. Gautama and Kannada find that atomic combination is the cause of everything, and the impersonalists like Ashtavakra discover that the spiritual effulgence of Brahman is the cause of all causes. But in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord himself declares that he is the source of impersonal Brahman, and therefore he is the personality of Godhead. Therefore he, the personality of Godhead, is the ultimate cause of all causes. Ishvara Sarva Bhutana. Ishvara Sarva. Was it? Ishvara, what's that? The Brahma Samhita verse? Ishvara
Parama Krishna.
Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha, Anadi Govinda, Sarva Karna Karma. Sarva Karna Karma means he's the cause of all the causes. So actually Prabhu refers to the last sentence. He says, it is also confirmed in the Brahma Samhita that Lord Krishna is the ultimate cause of all causes. Namo Vishnu Radhaya Krishna Vasaya Mutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste. So that 6.5 that is referred to here is here. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. Purport. The word Atma denotes body, mind, and soul, depending upon different circumstances. In the yoga system, the mind and the conditioned soul are especially important, since the mind is the central point of yoga practice. Atma refers here to the mind. The purpose of the yoga system is to control the mind and to draw it away from attachment to sense objects. It is stressed herein that the mind must be so trained that it can deliver the conditioned soul from the mire of nescience. In material existence, one is subjected to the influence of the mind and the senses. In fact, the pure soul is entangled in the material world because the mind is involved with the false ego, which desires to lord it over material nature. Therefore, the mind should be trained so that it will not be attracted by the glitter of material nature. And in this way, the conditioned soul may be saved. One should not degrade oneself by attraction to sense objects. The more one is attracted by sense objects, the more one becomes entangled in material existence. The best way to disentangle oneself is to always engage the mind in Krishna consciousness. The word he is used for emphasizing this point, i.e., or that is, that one must, it's italicized, that one must do this. It is also said, Mana eva manushanam karanam bandha mokshaya bandhaya vishaya shango muktai nir vishayamana. For man, mind is the cause of bondage, and the mind mind is the cause of liberation. Mind absorbed in sense objects is the cause of bondage, and mind detached from the sense objects is the cause of liberation. That's from the Amrita Bindu Upanishad 2. Therefore, the mind, which is always engaged in Krishna consciousness, is the cause of supreme liberation. This day is beginning very well. Started with a black cat at the entrance of the temple. When I came over this morning, spider crawling down, landing on my head. Just been a series of omens.
Symptoms of Kali Yuga.
Yes. And how to, it's interesting because yesterday I was in a really good frame of mind. I think everything's good. And sometimes when you feel like you've reached a certain point, when you understand this concept that the expression of blessing in disguise, like the things that happened to Draupadi and the Pandavas and to Mother Kunti, these were blessings in disguise. When things happen to you that are reversals of fortune, you get tested. But actually, you realize after you've been through it, oh, wow, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have realized this, it wouldn't have brought me to this point. So you think, now I get it, now I understand. And you think, oh, I can handle life from this point forward. And then you start a day like today, and you quietly are saying, Krishna. The last thing I want to do is sit here and talk to you right now. So, but it's my responsibility, it's my duty to do that. Because I'm being tested. And, there's a book that was written years ago. It said, why do bad things happen to good people? And I often wonder why they didn't write a book, why do good things happen to bad people? Because it always seems like the bad people get the good, at least in our civilization. I mean, sometimes it seems that way, but not always. But the point is that what is bad and what is good in this material world, anything that's going to, even if it's something, like if you inherit a large sum of money, you think, oh, that's a good thing. But actually, that may actually bring you to your knees. It may bring you to a state of for sure, it will bring you to more entanglement. Unless you're really fixed up, it's going to cause a series of cause and effects that are going to entangle you further within this material world. The material world is like, a spider's web. And it's interesting because, because of the spider, I thought of this example this morning. I mean, literally, there was a spider right where the sink is for the vajayjayam room, and I see it coming straight down in front of me. I back off. I don't know what kind of spider it is. So then I watch it go back up. I think I'm good. And then I start to do my thing, and it pops on my head. Where is it? And I see it go back up, and I'm checking out all the markings on it, if it's a dangerous one or not. And it didn't appear to have it had some markings, but it wasn't. Anyway, so I started thinking about this example I've heard, where when the spider makes the web, first of all, how they make them so intricately out of the saliva, out of their body. This is one of the miracles. You see these, they're just hanging out in free space, they're levitating. And they create this web that they can walk on, but there's a substance on the web that's very sticky. And anything that flies into it or walks into it can't get off of it. I mean, even if you, as a human being, walks into this spider web, it's very sticky, it's hard to get it off your skin. But you can imagine, like some moth flies into it, and it can't get off, but the spider has no problem walking along the web. It's made this very intricate web to entangle the the object of its, sense gratification, which or its meal. And so each living entity has its ability to, do things to survive. But if you look at them, like if you think about it, you watch this. There's like these. I guess they're some kind of lizard, like a gecko or a salamander or something. And they have them outside my bathroom. I can see them in the morning outside the window, and it just walks up the wall. It can walk right up the wall.
Glass.
And glass, yeah, anything. I mean, that's a mystic power. I mean, I was just hearing yesterday about this fellow who just did this free, without any ropes, I forget what they call it. Free climbing. And he climbed El Capitan. I don't know what it is. And it was like this big deal. And apparently it is. It's in Yosemite. It's just a sheer rock. I think something like 2,000, 3,000 feet up, straight up. No ropes. He climbs it. Just sheer granite. And they're analyzing the whole thing. And so I'm listening to it as I'm driving through doing my errands, hearing bits and pieces. And I was thinking about it, actually, this takes a lot of focus, what this person is talking about. He's really controlling his mind. He can't let anything bother his mind, like I was this morning. Everything was bothering my mind. And he has to stay completely focused. And so, right at the end, the last segment, when I walked into the car, this caller calls up and says, "It seems like this is like a spiritual practice. Do you practice because they mentioned the same thing I said, that you have to have your mind very focused. Do you have some spiritual practice? Because it seems like it's a spiritual thing that you're doing, or would require some kind of spiritual practice, like they mentioned Buddhism." And he said, "No, I have no interest in, I'm not religious, I'm not spiritual at all. But I can see what you say is true," and then he goes on to explain how focused he has to be in order to, and not allow anything to distract him, and nothing to upset him. If something doesn't go exactly right, because they spend a long time cleaning out gravel in little crevices. They go up with ropes, and then he has to, with a toothbrush, clean it out so that the gravel isn't there so he can get a grip. But how do you know some more gravel doesn't fall? And apparently everybody who does this ends up dead.
So they're later.
Yeah, I mean, so anyway, but my point is that this kind of focus of, controlling one's mind is what is required for spiritual life. To me, because the practice that we've been given of meditating on the Hare Krishna mantra, it's the simplest, but it's not very easy to control one's mind. As a matter of fact, it's like Arjuna says, like trying to control a hurricane, the winds of a hurricane. But Lord Brahma says, and Lord Brahma created this universe, so he should know. He says that this Hare Krishna mantra is the most auspicious thing in the universe. When you chant the Hare Krishna mantra, you taste. When you chant it in full meditation, and not just casually chanting, with your mind, and just, but really with focus and absorption on the sound vibration, you can taste the nectar of the lotus feet of Krishna. Your ears experience a sweetness, a nectar that it longs for. So you begin to desire, and you see these prayers from great sages, they say, my only wish is, my only prayer, please, the only benediction I ask of you is, and they're standing in front or at the feet of Krishna. They can ask for anything, and they say, please give me thousands of tongues and thousands of years so I can hear your glories and your name constantly. That's their only desire. And Krishna enters into the heart, and the heart, it becomes like a courtyard. Your heart becomes a courtyard where Krishna is sitting and residing, playing his flute. And the sound of Krishna's flute is so sweet that it melts stones. The calves, when drinking from the mother's udder, become stunned. And they just keep drinking, holding on to the udder. They can't move. And when the sound enters the ear of the devotees, it's like songbirds enter into his ear. And they build nests within your ear. And all you hear is the sound of Krishna's flute. Your perverted reflection is the problem that you have with the ringing in the ears. Because he's a vet. But that's a perverted reflection, that you can actually hear Krishna's flute always within your ears. This is the reward for getting serious about Krishna consciousness. This process of Bhakti Yoga has been taught to us by the founder Acharya A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, his divine praise, and by the previous Acharyas, is a very serious spiritual science. Now you can practice it casually, you can practice it half-heartedly, you can practice it very sincerely. Best to try, as the Bhagavad Gita says, things should be done moderately in the sense that, you should be enthusiastic. Like, don't confuse passion for enthusiasm. And don't confuse lethargy for patience. Understand the real meaning of patience and understand the real meaning of enthusiasm. So I think in Webster's it means enthused means it has some connection to it's a spiritual, like God is enthusing you in a spiritual way, not passionately. Because the passion leads to misery. Enthusiasm leads to God. And that's our goal. That's why we became Hare Krishnas. We're practicing the science. And we're trying to extricate our soul from all of these sufferings that we're experiencing. Rightly or wrongly. Because that's the whole point. I love this part of the Bhagavatam. Because this whole thing, discussion is, like Mataji was saying yesterday, the bull is standing right there and he knows who beat him, but he doesn't seem to want to tell Parikshit who did it. And it is a confusing thing. But if you read on, you begin to understand. First of all, this is Yamaraj who's talking. He's Dharmaraj. He lives a very interesting life. In the Mahabharata, Yamaraj is the father of Yudhisthira. He's also Yudhisthira's uncle Vidura, our beloved Uncle Vidura, who saves us lives on many occasions. He also happens to be, when Yudhisthira decides to go on to retire from being an emperor, when he realizes Krishna's left the planet, this dog shows up. And the dog becomes his loyal companion. And all of his relatives, his brothers, and all of them gradually fall by the wayside. And he's still on the pilgrimage, and that dog is right there, always there as his companion, protecting him. And when the celestial plane comes for Yudhisthira, he said, "Come, it's time for you to go back." And he gets to go on the plane, and then he says, "Well, I also want to bring the dog." And he said, "Oh, you can't bring a dog in here. You can't go on. This is a celestial plane. You can't bring a dog on this plane." He said, "This dog has been my loyal companion through thick and thin. It's the principle of religion. You never abandon a loyal friend." and they go back and forth, and then finally the dog shows himself to be Yamaraj. Yamaraj is his father. Yamaraj is his uncle. Yamaraj is his dog. And then, now, his Yudhisthira's great nephew, Parikshit, is asking this bull, the first time the signs of Kali have come, he's asking this bull, what's happening? Why did this happen? Who did this? Who's responsible? I want an answer now, because I will stop it now. I have the power to do it, and I'm not going to permit any offenseless creature, especially a bull and a cow, to be treated in this way. And it's Yamaraj he's asking. Once again, there's Yamaraj. What an interesting life he's living. He's got a lot of things he can do. I mean, when you finally do get free of this false ego, when we finally do, we can do all. I mean, our lives we're standing on the shores of complete, I don't have the proper words at this moment.
Unlimitedness.
Unlimited, yes, unlimited adventures and excitement and pleasure, enthusiasm and real love, fearlessness, no anxiety. Yes. No anxiety. Everything's an anxiety in this world. And so we're always trying to calculate, whose fault is it? And the bull refuses to say that it is Kali. Because if you understand, just like these different philosophers, if you analyze it, basically what they're trying to say, I mean, it's not so much but with these particular philosophers like Jayamini, Kanada, Gautama, and the other one they mentioned, that they don't necessarily state this, but present day, it's that God is like, if there is a God, he's an absentee landlord. In other words, he created the universe and then he went off on vacation. Like, he has no interaction with us. He doesn't care what happens to us. But that's just not the case. He's set up all kinds of systems within the universe. The Varnashram system, the scriptures. He comes himself on a regular basis. He sends his great devotees and the sons, and he's constantly trying to communicate with us. Come home! Give it up! And he sets up things so that, we, no matter how, but he allows us our so-called independence. But, the point is that when they say things like, well, why am I suffering? This is a better way to put it. I just heard this the other day about a serial killer who was, he was, I don't get all the details about it, but he in this particular case, he had several cases where he had killed women in several places. And in this one, it was 5. And he was convicted of killing 5 women. And he was given the death penalty. And actually, the serial killer was very happy. And he praised the judge and the jury for giving it, because I deserve this. But I've always thought, because, it says if someone commits a murder, the atonement, if it's a virtuous government, and if he's executed, then that's an atonement to be killed for murder. But what if he kills 5 women? This judge gave him 5 consecutive death sentences. I mean, I'm just wondering if this person really knows karma. Because you can't atone for 5 murders with 1 death sentence. So this judge said, you have 5 consecutive death sentences. Now, of course, I mean, Lord Chaitanya's movement, his mercy, I don't know how that works in this. There's always that, other ingredient of mercy. But this judge understood he needs 5 consecutive death sentences. And, unless you understand karma, That's the only way it's going to happen. But when something happens to us, it may be from something 100 lifetimes ago. We don't know why. It doesn't, and so that's why they say, why do bad things happen to good people? Well, and it's really hard to console someone when, their child is suffering. An innocent child hasn't done anything. And now they're suffering in this way, and they can't do anything about it. But, the truth of the matter is that nobody's innocent. If we're in this material world, we're guilty of something. None of us are innocent. I know I'm not. And Prabhupada came, and he gave us mercy. And that mercy is all we are made of. And this mantra is the weapon to save us from all of this constant. Because all of a sudden, you get all excited. I just won the lottery. I just found the person of my dream. It's all a mirage. It's just to involve you, entangle you further in the spider's web. And it's like the knot. What was the name of that knot you said yesterday in the class?
What's the name of the what?
The knot. Alexander the Great.
Gordian knot.
The Gordian knot. Prabhupada used to say, sometimes there's a knot, and it's so entangled. And if you've ever tried to untangle something like a wire or some rope, and you try to keep, if I just do this, and finally you just realize the only thing I can do is cut it with a knife. It's the only way it'll happen. It's too entangled. We have to cut the knot that we've been, like in Dickens's Christmas Carol, the ghost comes to him, and you see this chain? This is the chain that I've woven, and yours is this length when I died 7 years ago, and you have been working hard on it. It's a long chain of reactions. So, that's why bad things happen to good people. And sometimes when I was been in business, and I've had a lot of, I've been very fortunate, had a lot of success, but I've also had moments where everything was set up perfectly, and it seemed like a no-brainer, and we're definitely going to be able to make the money, and then nothing works. But the people that are they're eating meat, they're engaging in intoxication, they're engaged in all kinds of nonsense activities, they're doing great. And I keep thinking to myself, why? Why do they get to do good? I'm trying to make money to do something, to help the temple. And that's another thing, is that sometimes we get caught up in I'll get serious about Krishna consciousness once I make this money, and then I'll be able to give some money when I make the money, when I make my business successful. Or I'll be able to chant my rounds once I, get my health and this or that. There's always some excuse why I can't fully commit to the process. And this process is a science, and this process is the one science, or the one process in this age. It's a science of knowing how to act and how not to act, so that you can finally become liberated from the cycle of birth and death, which means misery, the cycle of misery, and go back home, back to God. Anyway, I'd like to thank you for listening, and please forgive me if I've said anything inappropriate. But if anyone has any questions or comments, yes.
Prabhu, you were mentioning how Krishna is everywhere. He's in every situation we can imagine. of all the senses, he's also the mind.
Yeah.
So if our difficulty is trying to overcome the ineptitude of our mind to actually see Krishna, if we're instead seeing opportunity for sense gratification, how do we get past that?
Yeah, especially when, I'll just reveal this to, maybe you can shut that door, I don't want to compete with that conversation. I'm sure it's very important. When I was working as a meter reader, and I felt like, how did I get to this point? I mean, because I had town president, then I had this business, and now I'm a meter reader. But I had so many realizations of what a great opportunity it was to give the Transcendental Sangha Krishna, the holy name, to all kinds of living entities. Some trees that were like 500 years old since the time of Lord Chaitanya now got to hear this. But when I'm out there, in the beginning especially, I'm like, who is this person in my head? Who is the mind? Because I was like constantly writing little lyrics about it, because it's like, who is that voice? Where do these ideas come from? Who is this mind that keeps taking me away from what I don't want to think about, taking me away from what I want to think about, and taking me over here and taking me over there. It's like there is, other entities involved. There has to be. It can't just be the residual effects of our previous, life. I really believe that, like in the play they do with Kali, they'll have like lust will be whispered in your ear, and greed and envy. And even in the play that was written, I don't remember his name, Kavi something. I think it was the one who wrote the Krishna, the Chaitanya Bhagavat. And anyway, there's a play, and Kali's talking to sin and lust and envy and greed and anger. And they're saying, you go and associate with them, and you can create, envy, and you can create lust over here, And like there's, I heard this discussion on NPR while driving that they're saying social media now. That's how it's a weapon that they're using to feed certain agents that have political agendas or corporate agendas or racial hatred. They use social media to feed people with ideas and thoughts and hatreds and fear. I said fears. So that you don't even realize how you're being manipulated. And advertising has been doing this for years, but now it's become really sophisticated with, so I'm not a member of Facebook, but I know devotees use it in a very elevated manner. I know that it's very popular amongst devotees, and I know that there's a lot of first-class preaching. I've seen Vaisheshika's Facebook and his classes, and it's just first class. I relish listening to it. But then there's also all this other stuff that's going on. So you have to be just like anything else. You have to be on guard. And the only way to do that is to be constantly reading Srila Prabhupada's books and listening to the lectures of other devotees and hearing their realizations. And then if you're chanting good rounds, Krishna gives you intelligence from within. And you will have the intelligence to discriminate between where to go and where not to go. Was that your question? I forgot.
I was stating that if Krishna is, of all the senses, he is our mind. If he's right there at every moment, every decision we make, every thought we have, our mind does three things: thinking, feeling, and willing. So he's mixed up in there.
He's witnessing it.
And we're not seeing him.
Well, to the extent I
taking
think we
his
turn to
guidance.
him, I think the answer is that to the extent that we turn to him by turning to our spiritual master, then he will instruct us, and by chanting properly our rounds. But to the extent, like the example of Prabhupada saying to that pilot, why is there, the pilot asked, why is there good and evil? And Prabhupada gave the example that when you're staring at you're facing the sun, it's all light.
Mm-hmm.
When you turn your back to the sun, there's a shadow, and it's darkness. So, if we're turning towards Krishna, he'll be there. If we turn our back to him, then we see the darkness. We hear the darkness, and it gets darker. And we want it darker. The darker it gets, the darker we want it. And the lighter it gets, the brighter we want it. Yes?
You were saying how no souls are innocent if we're in the material world. And yet when the child abuse thing happened, and some people said, well, it's maybe it's your karma, and then it's like, I've had a terrible thing to say, and that it's your karma. Of course, any kind of abuse is a terrible thing to do.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, should we be braver and stronger and also preach that, maybe it's your karma. Like this time in history is this me too. Me too used to mean I want it too, meaning I want this gadget or that gadget. Now me too means it happened to me too, and everybody's saying me too. And there's a big thing about it happened to me. Should we be preaching a little bit more about how maybe there is some karma involved in it, and it's only happening to your mind and body anyways?
Well, that's actually, you actually are asking two questions there, I think. And I wanted to answer the second part first because it's easier. I'm at the Me Too. I really believe that there's several aspects of that, but the Me Too movement is the result of feminism. And I'm not saying that women didn't have a legitimate, reason because there was mistreatment and abuse, and in the normal social order, as far as monogamous marriage and so on. But it went too far, and Prabhupada was not a fan of any ism. No ism is going to solve our solutions. The solution is Krishna consciousness. But if you see the result of women breaking free, because it always really bothered me that it seems as if they're saying that you don't want to just be a mother or a housewife. Well, why not? The mother in the Vedic culture is a guru. That's the most important role in a civilization. And it's like they consider if someone's a mother or a housewife, she's a second-class servant. But that submissive service attitude is actually what one should be cultivating for your spiritual life. But then, of course, they were abused. So, but in other words, it's much better to be an engineer or a lawyer, But then, when you go out into the work field, into the work job market, then you're going to be abused just as much, and maybe more, and apparently even more. So feminism didn't work. And sometimes I even think that, I don't get this. But as far as the children go, I did say that no one is innocent, but I believe that we should assume that these children did not deserve to be treated that way, and that it was on us to make sure that they were not abused, and it is on us to make sure that they will not be abused. Whatever their karma may have been, it doesn't matter, because I can't remember where it is, but in the Bhagavad Gita, because it's one of my favorite verses, because it really is an answer to almost every one of these complicated questions. Krishna says, the intricacies of what is good karma, what is bad karma, what is, transcendental, is very, very difficult to explain. The only thing, and why things are happening the way they are. He says the intricacies of karma is very difficult to explain. The best thing for you to know, the simplest thing for you to know is what is karma, what is karma, and what is nish karma, or transcendental. What is like pious activities, what is sinful activities, and what is a transcendental activity. That's what we need to know. And as far as like what those children's past was, is not relevant to the present. What the present situation is that the parents and the teachers are responsible to protect those children and not to abuse them. Yes?
Is it sort of like the dilemma from that I was talking about yesterday, that the Dharma is saying, we don't know the cause, and Parishad Maharaj is saying, tell me the cause, I have to punish him, it's my duty. So it's like a dilemma like that, because at the same time we don't want to create a victim culture, because we can also do that too, and that might not be so good.
That's a possibility, but and probably is what's happening to a certain extent. But because I even think sometimes when they first started coming out, especially with the actresses, it was like I almost felt like some of them were saying, like the second tier actresses were saying, "Well, I was abused too." Like in other words, they wanted me too. It was like it was like. They were being left out. They weren't good enough to be abused or something. I mean, if you understand what I'm saying. But what was the other thing you said? Say that again. What did you say again?
It's like the contrast between what Dharma the Bull was saying we can't know.
The other thing, that's the other thing is that Dharma says, and it's explained here, and it's very hard for me to completely fully understand it. But he says, once you say, this person is responsible, you've now implicated yourself in the actual act. In other words, the position of the living entity is to come to the realization that I am responsible for being here. And what is happening to me is because of my past activities, and it's happening by the sanctioning of the Lord. Now, having said that, there's also, as far as my understanding is, someone could actually have something happen to them that wasn't necessarily due to their karma. That's why the verse in the Bhagavad Gita says that the intricacies of action and reaction are so complicated that it's just best to know what is good karma, what is bad karma, what is transcendental. Yes?
And also on that point, when you come before the deities and clap your hands, even 3 times, all your karma, a lot of it flies away. So we should also definitely feel it's our job to protect everyone.
We should feel that anyway. I'm not saying that.
We inside, we know, yes, I could have brought this on from my previous
But it's not exactly the same, but if you think about what happened with Prahlad and Dhruva Maharaj, that was child abuse. Especially Prahlad. I mean, Dhruva's was child abuse.
Because he tried to poison him and throw him off a cliff.
They tried to kill him.
You don't do that.
And repeatedly. I mean, that's the worst child. And well, I don't know if it's the worst, but it's... And then Dhruva's being rejected by your father and not given the same love as your stepbrother. That's abuse. That's mental, verbal abuse. And he's a Kshatriya. He wasn't going to tolerate that. He's going to do something about that. And he did. Well, you have a question about Bhajan?
Oh, yeah,
I'm sorry.
just mentioning on your thing about good things happening to bad people.
Yeah.
Well, in my opinion, let those people do what they want. We're focusing on controlling the mind on a higher transcendental platform. Those people are stuck in the material world, and
Exactly.
that's their misery. And what do you think about that?
I think you're brilliant. That was a brilliant explanation.
What'd you say? I missed that.
That was really.
Spelling a word.
He said, as far as my statement about good things happening to bad people, that's not really for us to worry about. That happened to them, and let them alone, let them live their life, and let them deal with it. Right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, they seem to be on a different platform.
They're on a different platform.
Yeah.
And you don't know that it's a good thing that's happened to them. Yes?
Yeah, just to add to this, thanks for the great class actually. But there's so many stories of saints who were put underneath extreme pressure, like Lord Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, Haridas Thakur, Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And their character was tested, but they didn't crack.
Right.
Their suffering was actually a source of attachment to Krishna.
Yeah.
And I was just appreciating your instructions about how we're, if we're reading Srila Prabhupada's books and we're hearing lectures by his disciples, and if we're chanting, good rounds, Krishna gives us the intelligence from within. And I guess just to end on somewhat of a light note, Vaisheshika Prabhu, I was hearing from him, and he said that Krishna actually wants us to come back home more than we want to go.
Go back.
Yeah, he wants us there.
Yeah, and when you like I mentioned, again, I know astrology is a bona fide science, but it's hard to find a good. But I've had, back at the beginning of this decade, 2 or 3, and just coincidentally ran into 3. And they all said the same thing. Oh, this is going to be the best part of your life. And then everything was just tragedy. But what happened was, I, started getting a real serious sadhana program, like I had in the early days, even more serious. So that is a good thing. Yes.
What we were just saying, just before Dr. John made that comment, and then you kind of summarized it, but you were saying, that's kind of like their problem. We have a different situation, but we shouldn't see it that way. We should see it as that Prabhupada, wanted all of us to help those people and give them the mercy, just like we got the mercy. And then their lives also can become perfect, and that bad karma can go away, and they can rise up to the spiritual platform, which we're all trying to do every day. But if we can have the attitude that, that's not my problem, that's their problem. But if we could take on some of that responsibility of trying to somehow or other, like some people give a book when they go and they meet someone extra nice, they think, wow, I have a card or a book or something, or invite them to the I say sometimes we have a free love feast at, it just sounds really sweet and open. But everyone, we can't be judging who has bad karma and, all these people are demons. We still have to give out the mercy just like Prabhupada did to us.
Yeah, and exactly. Prabhupada was taking on, we were all, most of us, not all of us, but a large percentage in the very beginning, late 60s or 70s, we were all floating around on psychedelics and herbal products. And one other thing is though is that that when you see someone you think is bad, but something good happened, it's a kind of envy, and you have to give that up. Yes.
There was a time I had an apartment on the street, and there were also homes, and there was this one house, it's sort of a very Tudor, very English, and the woman was attractive, and the gentleman had a really expensive car. It eventually came, I ended up teaching ballet for her, and I found out that her daughter had been murdered in a real yuppie street. She had an apartment on this street, to be on. And I thought I was being helpful by telling her about, she's not, I don't know what it is exactly I told her, but I really offended her. And I had been associating with devotees, and I thought this would help her not feel so bad about what happened to her. And she just thought I was incredibly callous.
Yeah. I've had that experience.
Like you say, it's a very delicate.
Yeah. But it also, I thought you were going to say that you saw these people living this nice life, and you thought, well, that would be nice. I could be like them. But then you find out that they're suffering really awful experiences are happening to them. And a lot of these people that recently, for some of these famous actors, and that they get all this great success in say their movie's a big hit, and they have several big hits, and now they got the big mansion and the cars and everything, all the parties. You go to all the parties. Nobody, and all the people that are supposed to, the it people, and you find out that nobody in that group likes each other. They're always, talking about each other and envious of each other. And you walk into the mansion and it's like empty, and you feel hollow inside. This is it? What am I going to do? I'm not happy. And it eliminates your ability to be the person you were, who brought you there, because you can't associate in the same circle of friends. You can't go to the same places without being inundated by, quote unquote, fans. And so you have to be automatically segregated from what made you who you were. And so you feel disconnected. So, they get success, but then they also get loneliness. There's a very famous poem that's about this man who lives on top of the hill, and he owns the whole town, but meanwhile he's the loneliest man in town. Everybody's wishing they could be like him, So there's so many places, things like that. But I also personally, one of my first experiences, like what Colleen just mentioned, was I had been, trying to become a devotee not trying, but actually I've been trying to avoid to become a devotee. I couldn't argue with it anymore. And I had just finished reading the Krishna book, and the young woman that I was engaged to, her father died. 2 weeks after he had just told me about how he had worked real hard for so many years, and now he's finally reached the plateau that he, everything that he'd ever wanted, and then 2 weeks later he was dead. And wow, that's, it was really a classic example of, what profits the man who gains the whole world, and then he loses his soul. And he was offering me this whole wonderful world of material pleasures, and he dies. So I sent a condolence card, and I quoted, it's really stupid, but it was the speech that Vasudeva gave to Kamsa about why are you so afraid of death? Death was already born along with your birth. And I thought this was the best thing I could say to them. But I didn't realize at that point that when you get to a certain point, when you're reading transcendental Krishna stories associating with Krishna through the Bhagavatam, or the Krishna book, and you're chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, you're in a different dimension.
Yeah.
And you lost connection with, the other people that you knew. And so for me to say that So I go over to their home. They were Jewish, and they have this ceremony called they're sitting Shiva, where they sit and talk about this person that passed away. And if you've ever had an experience of walking into a house of Jewish mothers and grandmothers, and they are ready to destroy you. How dare you! And this philosophy that I've been trying to convince the devotees that, yeah, it's good, but I don't need to be in it. And now I'm in the position where I got to defend that philosophy. And I'm being attacked on all sides. And I'm having to preach to them. And in the course of it, because I had a magazine from 26 2nd Avenue, and up to this point for 3 years, wherever I went, I could not see the devotees. I was in Boston, so I get off the train where I lived. There they were doing Harinam. I go to San Francisco, trying to get away. First thing I do, I'm walking down Market Street, and this devotee walks up to me with a BTG, and he gives it to me. You've got to have this BTG. I said, well, I don't have any money right now. I said, no, you need it. You take it. And it's got pictures of a wedding in Boston several months prior that I had been at. And I think, whoa, this is too much. So I started doing Harinam with them, and anyway, it was one thing after another. So then I finished, on Christmas Day 1970, I was going back to New York, but I went to the San Francisco temple, and I gave a $100 donation. And the temple president, Chichikananda, he ran off to get me books, and I said, I don't need it. It was a Krishna book. It was 2 of them. And I said, I don't need it. I've already read the Gita. He said, no, you wait, you need this book. And you talk to this person. It was Jayananda. I mean, and he was a presence. And he said, my spiritual master said that I am a candidate for becoming perfect. And I can see that you also are a candidate to become perfect. And I thought, wow. I could feel it's like he had such a presence. And I thought, it was the sweetest thing anyone ever said to me, that his spiritual master said. And I had already rejected, for some reason, something, if you grow up in New York, you get a certain, you can smell BS, and all these Maharishis and these people. I even started doubting the Beatles when I found out they were hanging out with the Maharishis. I mean, but the devotees and hearing them and talking to them and actually chanting, I knew. It was just a matter of time. And when he said that his guru said it to him, and now you're saying it to me, wow, that was special. Then I go back to New York, I finished college, and then that summer I started to sit down and read the Krishna book. And I had certain habits at that time, but after, that whole month, I never did any of those things. And, like intoxication or a girlfriend or anything like that, I just forgot about it. I just was absorbed in reading this Krishna book. It just changed my life. And then I was chanting more, and then I go to visit my parents, and on TV, I see Prabhupada on TV. He's arriving at Kennedy Airport. So I immediately take off, but I take off at 26 2nd Avenue. I can't find it. I'm all over the place. I walk up and down Manhattan, like a whole day, the length and breadth of it. Couldn't find the devotees. It's because they were in Brooklyn. And so in this argument or this discussion with my fiance's family, one of the cousins says, you sound like one of those Hare Krishna down on Henry Street in Brooklyn. And I go, Henry Street? Is that Brooklyn Heights? So if I change at Jamaica, because it's the Long Island Railroad, so is that where I change at Jamaica and I get the full thing? He goes, yeah, that's the train.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you. The next day I was gone. That was it. That was over. It's over. Never saw them again, never talked to them again, finished. It's amazing how Krishna works. Because I kept seeing them, I could not see them, and then when I wanted to, I couldn't find them. So I had to prove myself, yes?
3 quick points,
Yeah.
less than 2 or 3 minutes. Sometimes good things, remember that story? This could be good, this could be bad?
Yeah.
About the young king, a prince that went off on a ride in the countryside, he got captured, and he got his ear cut off, and...
I don't remember that story, but
but he was not
perfect.
perfect, so they couldn't sacrifice him.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Oh, yeah, I
sometimes-
know that one, yeah.
So sometimes what happened that seems good
Yeah.
can actually be bad in the final outcome, and what's bad could actually be good in the final outcome, so we don't really know. Second point, Prabhupada said that these children are special.
That's right.
So those children that got abused,
Prabhupada
spiritual
said he
master-
would personally beat them, those teachers.
right? So that was really
Yeah,
a little
no,
off.
no.
Somebody's not reading the whole counsel
That's right.
of.
If they were born in this movement,
it's special,
they
so they should not
this
be
was a
touched.
serious offense.
Well,
Yeah.
my question was on that. See,
Third
like,
one.
this is, okay.
Third point, you read something yesterday that said that difficulties get harder as we get more mature and older. It doesn't get easier, like, wow, now I
I just want to respond to that real quick, because I was thinking this morning that I keep thinking that now I got it, now I understand it,
It's gonna get harder.
but then I just realized that, I'm really starting to experience old age and all the concomitant reactions, and I know it's just only going to get worse. It's not going to get better, materially speaking.
But we can get more mature.
Yeah. And then, but then when you get in that moment, you think, I really am mature now and I really got it. And then, and then you realize...
It's spiritual.
So, but there's another story about that, I'll just quickly say. I heard this, it's a Chinese folklore story. I heard one of these devotees that was speaking in Vrindavan at one of the festivals they have in May, I forget what they call it. And anyway, she was saying there was a farmer once, and one day a horse wandered onto his property, and all the other farmers said, "Wow, this is such good luck." And the farmer says, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" So he has the horse for a while, and things are going pretty good. And then the horse just disappears, and then all his friends say, "You lost your horse. That's really bad luck." He goes, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" So then the horse comes back a few weeks later, and now the horse has a wife and a baby. And they're all saying, "Wow, this is such good luck." He goes, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" Anyway, so then, now he's got the extra horse, so he can use the horse not only for working, but one horse for a cart. And one day, I think it was his son, his son was on the cart, and they hit a rock, and his son fell off the cart and broke his leg. And everybody says, "Oh, this is really bad luck, your son's broken his leg." And he goes, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" So then shortly after that, the king in that area, that province, had declared war. So he sent out all the soldiers in the army to come around and draft all the young men. And when they came to his place, they had to reject his son because he had a broken leg. Good luck, bad luck, who knows? Yes, it's very late. Yes.
Just this one point, not that we shouldn't punish perpetrators, not that we shouldn't be upset that these things happen to the kids, not that the kids aren't special, but we do have a philosophy that the soul is not harmed, and the mind and body can be harmed, but they're only mind and body, and maybe we're weak, and I know that there has to be a time for emotional reactions, and that has to be allowed, like with grieving too. So you have to allow people to miss the person.
Well, I just have several of those children in my, they're friends of my, one of them is married to my son, and she has all kinds of, she's the mother of my grandchildren, and she was abused by someone that I warned the school about, and they still didn't do anything about it.
Well, she's still
And so she's damaged. She is damaged. And there's another young man, well, he's not young anymore, he's in his mid-40s, and he just can't find himself. He goes to school, becomes a nurse, and another kind of nurse, another kind of nurse, but he can't function in society, and he can't have a relationship with a woman. He doesn't know who he is. He's damaged. So it's not that easy. You may philosophically or intellectually be able to say these points, but in real life, in real practice, it isn't that easy. It's hard.
I don't think we should just stop at the emotional. I'm just saying we're still lacking a whole way to treat this, a whole way
I
to
agree
treat
with you.
this.
I'm not really in
Because
full knowledge.
if you mention philosophy, then people come down on you because of emotional reaction, and they just...
I don't know that all of the things that they're doing now, but I know that they've taken it very seriously about this, protecting the children. But as far as how to deal with the aftermath, with the ones that were, I don't know how...
There's this group called Pray Like Prahlad, and at first you think, wow, that's really dramatic. Pray like Prahlad, he was abused and everything. But actually the point was, Prahlad forgave. Prahlad rose above it.
Yeah.
So that is a group of abused kids saying, pray like Prahlad. So Prahlad actually never had a victim mentality, ever.
Because Prahlad was Mahabhagavad.
I know, but we all can be a Mahabhagavad. We all came from the spiritual world, but we're all Mahabhagavats, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, this pray like Prahlad.
It's to help the person
It
recover.
doesn't mean, boy, you got to really pray hard because it's really bad. It means pray to forgive, rise above. You have an eternal spirit soul, and we may be a bit lacking in bringing people to that point.
But then you should be able to say that to the women that feel this, why they became feminists.
Same thing.
Or
It's the same thing.
why. And the thing is that it's never mixed into this discussion, is that men are abused by women, and we've seen this with school teachers. There's a whole. It happens on a regular basis. These women will take a 15-year-old boy, and people don't seem to react to it in the same way. But it's an abuse.
Yeah.
I know boys that were abused by older, like teenage girls or other things, and it's not. It isn't getting lucky. It isn't getting lucky. It's abusive. And that happens also. There's all kinds of abuses. Parents, we feel this or that. Ultimately, the whole material world. And then we are abusers ourselves. I try to think of myself as a person who's caring and so on. And then I find myself being very cold and not receptive, even to my wife sometimes, or to other people. Depending on how I'm feeling at that moment. You don't see it in yourself. There's all kinds of abuse that goes on. When we abuse ourselves, we're our own worst enemies. That's what's so interesting about this section of the Bhagavatam. Because you get to discuss these. First of all, the other philosophies like Jayamina. And if you really want a good place to read about the different philosophies, is the lifting of Govardhan Hill, or where Krishna is trying to convince his father not to perform the Indra puja, because he gives the different arguments of the different philosophers and convinces him to worship Govardhan Hill instead of Indra. He describes the Jayamina, Karma Mimamsa philosophy and so on. Anyway, I should end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
One thing is, what's her name told me that